Treasury of Illustrated Classics, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea by Jules Verne. Chapter 11. A Fight to the Finish. The Nautilus drifted north, carried along by the swift current of the Gulf Stream. Captain Nemo did not leave his cabin. He seemed to care no longer about his ship. He felt that the sea had turned against him. Before long, the Nautilus began to drift closer to the shores of America. Again, Ned saw the chance for an escape. There were a lot of boats on the American coast, and Ned was sure that one of them would pick us up. But his plans were ruined. The weather turned stormy. Cyclones whipped the waves into a frenzy. It would be certain death to try to escape in that kind of weather, with waves as big as mountains. However, Ned had made up his mind that he was going to try to escape. Conseil and I sat down with him to talk things over. "I can't stand this any longer," shouted Ned. "I want to go back to my home and family." "What can we do?" I asked. "You know that the captain said we could never leave." "Ask him again," Ned shouted. "I do not want to be a prisoner for the rest of my life." I decided to try to reason with Captain Nemo. Soon Ned would do something foolish and endanger his life. I had little hope of convincing the captain to let us go, but surely there was some way. I found Captain Nemo playing the organ in his cabin. He turned around and faced me. "What do you want?" he said rudely. "I'm busy. Leave me alone," he raged. I knew that this was not a good time to speak with Nemo, but I didn't care. Bravely, I stood before him, squaring my shoulders. "Captain, I must speak to you," I said firmly. Nemo stood thinking. He looked as though he didn't hear me. Then he pointed to a book. "This is my diary," he said. "It tells my life story and all my secrets." The secrets of the great Captain Nemo? I could hardly believe my ears. Then I got an idea. "Captain, let me and my friends take care of that diary for you," I said. "Think of what the world could do with your knowledge," I exclaimed. "Now I see what you want," screamed Nemo. "Never, never, you will never leave the Nautilus alive." When I told Ned and Conseil what Nemo had said, Ned turned pale and clenched his fist. "We will leave this ship no matter what Nemo says," Ned swore. But the storm pushed the Nautilus away from the United States. We had missed our chance. Ned felt so upset, he just stayed in his cabin. The next day the storm cleared. We were very far north. Ned and I went out on the deck. I tried to cheer him up. Then we saw a ship. It was way off in the distance, but it was headed right towards us. "What kind of ship is that?" I asked Ned. "Why, it's a warship!" Ned cried excitedly. Ned was really joyous. He thought that the warship would pick us up if we could get off the Nautilus. All at once there was a loud bang. Then we heard a big splash. "What was that?" I asked Ned. "It was a cannonball," Ned shouted. "They're firing at us." He waved his handkerchief at the ship as a sign of peace. Suddenly, Captain Nemo sprang up on the deck and knocked Ned flat. "You fool!" the captain screamed. "I'll nail you to the deck if you try that again." Ned didn't say a word. He just slunk below. The captain looked like a madman. His face was white and his black eyes looked like burning coals. I stood watching as Nemo raged. I remembered another time when Captain Nemo was very nasty. The night he had locked us in the cabin and drugged us. Then there was a poor sailor who had died from terrible head wounds. All at once I knew Captain Nemo was at war with the world. He was the enemy. Captain Nemo hoisted the black and gold flag of the Nautilus. He was getting his mighty ship ready for battle. "Why are you going to attack?" I shouted at Nemo. "You can easily dive and get away." "I'm going to sink that ship," Nemo roared, pacing back and forth like an angry animal. "I have lost my country, my wife, my children," the captain cried. "That ship is everything that I hate. I will destroy it." Then Nemo became quiet. He stood staring. The rest of that day, Nemo let the warship chase the Nautilus. He kept the warship in his sights, but he stayed out of firing range. I hurried to find Ned and Conseil. The three of us ducked into my cabin. "We have got to escape," I whispered. "Captain Nemo is a madman." "Good," said Ned. "We'll try it at nightfall." Night came up on the deck. Nemo stood there watching the warship in the moonlight. It was getting closer. I could see the shadows of her crew running about the deck. The warship was going at top speed. The glow from her engines colored her red. The sparks leapt into the air and fell like dying stars. Captain Nemo just stood watching and waiting. A misty dawn broke over the deadly chase. As the sun began to rise, the Nautilus started to slow down. Nemo was letting the warship catch up. "This is it," I said to Ned and Conseil. The three of us waited in the saloon by the big window. With pounding hearts, we waited to see what would happen. The Nautilus dove down just under the surface of the water. The warship wouldn't even know what was attacking it. All at once, the Nautilus charged. It charged with powerful engines going full blast. It was going so fast that we were flattened against the wall. Then came the horrible sound of ripping metal. I shall never forget it. The Nautilus went right through the warship as easily as a sharp knife goes through butter. The great bulk of the warship began to sink with all hands on aboard. It was an awful sight. Water poured like great rivers into the wounded warship. As the water rose, the poor men struggled to hold on to anything they could find. 100 men were drowning before our eyes. After cutting through the ship, Captain Nemo went above and I followed. He just stood there watching. The drowning men must have taken their last gulp of air before the water filled their screaming mouths. Then there was a terrible explosion. My eyes bulged in horror as I saw the warship plunge to the bottom of the sea. I turned toward Captain Nemo. So this was his kind of justice. I no longer cared about myself. I would tell him what I thought. He was a murderer. Before I could speak, Captain Nemo fell on his knees. He stretched his arm towards a small painting of a woman and 2 children. Then the great Nemo hung his head and began to sob. Thanks for listening. If you like what you heard, please click like and subscribe.